Good morning, afternoon, evening, and good night. I'm Zombo,
And I'm Shade Reagan.
and I don't know if the previous video is popular, but Shade and I had a lot of fun doing it, so we decided to do a whole series of tier lists for Warhammer because
Until we
we both love the games, a lot of the sub games, and we've got a lot to say about a lot of them.
until we get bored of it
Yeah.
and kind of wander off.
Okay, Tally. So last time we did Warhammer 40,000 armies. This time we're going to do Age of Sigmar.
The
Uh,
better game.
the better game, yeah, right now. Uh, but you're gonna notice while Shay kept saying this might be controversial last time, this time you're gonna hear a lot from me of I don't know a whole lot about these guys, but I have opinions on the models.
Should we make C tier be the ambivalent tier then?
Yeah, you know what, that will work. That works.
Well,
Um,
actually, we have two C tiers for some reason.
yeah, we do, don't we? Because that was
Yeah,
definitely. You know what? My defense, I didn't make this tier list like last time.
yeah. So why don't we replace like the second C with a D, and then we can replace D tier with ambivalence.
Do you want to do the D tier's ambivalence?
I don't want to rank them super low. I mean, I have opinions on all the armies.
Yeah.
So
So I mean, I don't think there's any armies in Sigmar that I hate. So I don't know if I think any of them will deserve D the way I do. So I'm up for making just D the meh tier.
you mean you just made C the meh tier?
Yeah, and then I fixed it.
Okay. All
So,
right.
like with the 40k list, this is not a competitive ranking. This is how we feel about the factions and the armies and the models.
How objectively cool they are.
Yes. And speaking of objectively cool, we're going to start off with the what's the Zinch faction even called?
Disciples of
Disciples of Zinch.
Zinch.
And I really like the mortals of Zinch. I talked about it last time in the demons list, but I don't especially care for Zinch demons as a whole. I like screamers, and I like keepers, lords of change. But as far as the
Uh,
mortals go, I really like Zangors as far as Zinch goes, or as far as Sigmar goes.
I think the actual human Disciples of Zinch are really, really cool because they look like buff dudes,
Yeah,
but that's because they're using magic to make themselves into physically perfect specimens. Um, so they're not actually like working out or anything. It's literally just magic, instant himbo mode.
where do you work out? At the library.
Exactly.
So
Um,
I would say B or A for these guys.
I would say A. The Zinch demon side holds back a little bit because I feel like it's not as cool as the mortal side. And two, they kind of have a very annoying game mechanic to play against.
I wouldn't know about that. I've played 2 Sigmar games ever.
You know, Miracle Dice,
Yep.
they had them first.
Oh boy. All right, moving on. I think this is Sons of Bahamut.
That is correct. It's the Gargants, the big boys,
And
the
well,
Sigmar equivalent of Imperial Knights.
I think they're butt ugly. I think that actually works to their advantage. Like
They have some. They
they're
have some
butt ugly, but
hilarious rules.
they're butt ugly on purpose.
Yes.
And you were talking about
They have
them in 40k, them having hilarious rules regarding objectives.
Yeah, they can punt the objective. There's one of them who instantly kills a model, but it's explained as him picking them up and stuffing the person in their bag, which is very funny. Um, but they're also kind of an annoying army to fight against. Not quite to the knight tier of either you're prepared for them or you utterly aren't, because Age of Sigmar really doesn't work that way. But still, these guys have more wounds than most of the deity models, which feels very, very weird.
Who will
Um,
win? The goddess of life, incarnate, uh, this being who is riding atop a manifestation of thousands of spirits together. One very angry troll.
well, don't get me wrong. I believe on average, like Nagash is going to kill one of these guys, but it is like a bit of a ludo narrative dissonance and a bit weird. I would put these guys into B tier.
All right. Next, we've got the Ogor Ma tribes.
Correct, the Ogor Ma tribes.
And I've got zero opinion on these guys.
So Ogor Ma tribes, they come in two flavors. They've got your traditional sort of ogres from fantasy, where go around, eat stuff, mercenary life kind of thing. And they've got the Beast Claw Raiders. And the whole thing with the Beast Claw Raiders is that they are being eternally chased by a snowstorm, a supernatural snowstorm. But because they're ogres, they're very tough and hardy, so they kind of have adapted to it a little bit, and they can use it as a weapon. Um, I think what Fantasy and Age of Sigmar have done with ogres is very fun. They took what's usually a very generic, standard fantasy race and added a lot of flavor to them, pun intended.
Do ho 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 ho.
They've got the very fun society about eating things, and always being hungry, and like there's actually a weirdly large amount of thought put into it. I don't particularly care that they made Gorka Morka their god instead of giving them their own separate one, but still,
Well,
they're pretty
doesn't
fun.
don't all the destruction factions serve Gorka Morka in one form or another?
No, some of their gods may be influenced by Gorka Morka, but the gulping god is literally Gorka Morka.
Oh, that is dumb. So
Yeah.
I personally put them in meh. But do you want them higher?
I would put them in A tier.
Really?
Um, but we could split the difference and put them in B tier if you want.
All right. Next, another army where I like a couple of the models, but this is, I think, Beasts of Chaos.
That is correct. That is Beasts of Chaos.
So I like Beastigors. I was kind of mentioning this with Zengors. I like the whole Beastmen faction or Beastmen race.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the models I think work better. Like I don't especially care for Slangors, but the basic Beastigors. I mean, I can't think of a single other Beast of Chaos model other than like the basic Bestigor.
What about the Cygors?
Nope.
Okay. Um, I don't particularly care for the Beasts of Chaos. And part of the problem, and this is not really a thing I like to say, but they are a jobber faction if I ever saw one.
Oof.
They tend to die in the lore and contribute very little else. And I think it's a little lame that they're supposed to all be like mutated animal men of various kinds in the lore, and then in the tabletop they're all just goat men.
Yeah.
I would C tier them.
Not meh.
Well, meh is our ambivalent tier.
Fair
It's
enough.
our
Yeah.
not
All right.
strong
Bottom
enough of an
tier.
opinion. I have negative opinions on them.
All right. Next is the Cities of Sigmar, and I mentioned earlier I've played like 3 games of Sigmar. My very first game, I had mostly just painted a Sylvaneth army, and I brought them to my friendly local game store, which was a very low general power level. And I had a guy who had like 4 Hydras and summoned an endless spell on top of me before I even recognized why it wasn't super dangerous. So, all that being said, I have a little bit of lingering salt over Cities of Sigmar. But man, do I like a lot of the general idea of the lore of them, where it's like all the various civilizations and stuff coming together to march with Sigmar.
Um, so I'm gonna add on to the salt because my first game against the Cities of Sigmar, I got shot to pieces from all the way across halfway to the table. Like units just deleted,
Yeah.
all charges failing, everything sucked, and they kind of have the Imperial Guard problem that they are not a fun army to fight, and they're not as boring as Imperial Guard because hey, they still have magic and like fantasy creatures, and they can bring some flavors of stuff.
What
But
you think?
still,
Hydras are cooler than the glorious perfection of the Lehman Russ battle tank?
well, I think Hydras are cooler than Hydras.
Man, why? How did I miss that joke?
I don't know how you did. I thought that was rather obvious. Um, they're another C tier for me personally.
Yeah, I like
They've
I
got a lot
like
of
I like the aesthetic, like the general, a lot of their models, but I cannot justify putting them any higher.
they've got a lot of disparate like model lines that just do not like mesh together. And GW really needs to get on with the Dawnbringer Crusade rework.
Alrighty, next we've got possibly the first S tier, the Idoneth
Ideneth
Deepkin.
Deepkin.
They've got
Yeah.
fantastic lore, being weird soul vampires, summoned in with the coming of the mists, riding along, riding on flying eels and turtles and crabs.
And Sharks.
The only thing holding them back is their keeps.
Yeah. But that didn't stop the Drukari.
True, but the
Uh,
Drukhari are also based.
yeah. And the Ideneth are based on the
Yes.
Drukari.
Yes. So I
Somewhat.
do not feel guilty about putting them in S tier.
No, yeah, S tier. Very original idea, very cool models for a large most part. Very fun, very unique. S tier for me.
Alrighty. Next, we have an army that I want to like. I really want to like these guys. We got the Flesh Eater Courts. Um,
What? No, no, that's the Knights of Bretonia.
oh yes, you're right. These are the Bretonian Knights. Um,
Yeah.
and when I say I really want to like this faction, Shade here is running a Soulbound, Age of Sigmar Soulbound campaign, Champions of Death, where we're playing a death campaign, and I'm currently playing a abhorrent ghoul named Sir Apoth, and I'm
Yes,
having
the
so
Noble
much fun with
Knight.
him. And he is a noble knight from the realm of Britonia, not to be confused with Bretonia. And the whole idea of the delusion versus the truth, and it should result in some gorgeous models. And they do have some nice models, you know. The what's the zombie dragon called?
Terrorgeist?
Yeah, Terrorgeists.
I mean, there's
Gorgeous
Terrorgeist
model.
in actual zombie
Yes, there
dragons.
is actual zombie dragons, but you knew what I meant. The Terrorgeists.
Yes.
Gorgeous models. That new abhorrent ghoul king that they made for the Christmas of 2022, gorgeous model. Vargulfs, fantastic models, but for the most part, they really, really need a new model line.
I'm surprised you even like the Vargolf model.
Really?
That model's old as shit.
I think the Vargulf at least gets by with being super characterful.
Are you thinking of the Varg skier?
The big weird bat person thing.
Yeah. Well, I
Pretty
mean
sure I'm
that's a
thinking of the
couple of them.
Vargulf. Let me.
Let me help you out here for a second, because I have it pulled up. Now just send it to you. And
That is
'cause
not the
own
model
a
I was
Varg.
thinking about. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah, these guys need new models
It is the Varg
desperately.
skier I was thinking of.
Yeah, that's not a flesh eater court thing.
Is it not? Oh, okay.
The Varg skier are regular vampires.
All right. Well, I think Flesh Eater Courts would be A if not S, but their model line puts
See,
them down to B for me.
I'd put them in S if they had better models, but everything else, all things considered, I'd put them in A.
All right. Next is the dwarfy dwarfs.
The Fire Slayers.
I have no opinions on these guys.
They're very, very dwarf. Well, dwarven, but they're very stereotypical dwarf. They live underground, but in volcanoes. They're kind of mercenary-like, and they're trying to get Urgold because it's believed to hold the essence of their slain god, Grimnir. And they believe by releasing the essence, Grimnir can be brought back to life. They've kind of got a berserker thing going with them. And the cool thing with them is that they pound the Urgold into their skin like tattoos, and this makes their body like hard as metal, and gives them other supernatural powers. So that's why they don't wear armor.
I thought Urgold was like lighter than air.
That's Aether Gold.
Oh, okay.
Both flavors of Dwarden are after gold.
Dwarves and gold.
However, these guys' models, not great. They look very samey, look very like symmetrical, and they've got a very small army line.
So,
man, I think there's potential. I would even C tier them, but they're like a higher C tier.
All right.
They've got potential.
Next, boss wants to stare at the bad moon, I think.
Yeah, Gloomspike gets.
Yeah, the Gloomspike gets.
The Everdank.
The Mushroom Men. What kind of a person puts Mushroom Man in their deck unironically? These guys.
Well, I mean, it kind of depends what flavor of Gloomspite you're talking about, because you could be playing the Spider Walkers, in which case,
Do Spider Walkers not have the mushrooms too?
To a much lesser degree. They don't even worship the Bad Moon. They worship the Spider God.
Oh, I see.
So that's what I'm talking about. Like, they've got the Spider God, who is a death god that has not been eaten by Nagash.
Hacks.
And they do follow the Bad Moon, but that's because they believe it's the Spider God's egg.
Mm.
The regular ones have the Bad Moon. And there's the Troggoths, who are just kind of happy to be along for the ride. Because they're a little too dumb to think otherwise.
I love their the model line, and I love the fact that they turned Gretchens into a full line. I mean, I guess they're goblins, but whatever. I put them comfortably in A myself.
I would even go so far as to bump them up to S.
Yeah?
Especially given the fact that their faction leader has been one of the more major movers and shakers for Team Destruction. And he does it by being a sneaky git.
Alrighty. So, S it is. And now we come to one that I don't know if you're not going to like this.
Blades of Cahorn?
Blades of Cahorn. I don't like the mortals of Khorne. For these ones. Yeah. I love Bloodthirsters. I dig Blood Crushers. I like the Juggernauts. But man, I do not like the mortals for Sigmar.
I don't universally love the Khorne mortals, but I think some of them look cool. Some of them, normally it's when they're more heavily armored and closer looking to like Khornate Chaos Warriors.
Yeah.
Those ones I think are cool. Some of their characters are cool. Others, though, are a little bit flashy. But Blades of Khorne do deserve, I think, a bit of an honorable recognition for being one of the first two Age of Sigmar factions to get new models and stuff. Because first edition Age of Sigmar launched with Stormcast versus Blades of Cahorn, fighting for Akshi, the realm of fire.
B tier?
B tier.
Alright. Next is another faction I think is just entirely meh. Maggotkin of Nurgle. I have no opinion on
Um,
these guys. None whatsoever.
I am I am sick of Nurgle. Uh, I mentioned that in the other video. They keep appearing everywhere these days in like GW secondary material, and I'm very tired of seeing them.
Yeah, I played
But
Vermintide with you for like 20 minutes, and I got bored almost immediately. But like 90% of what we fought was just whatever plague bringers.
that was a weird. In either case, I do think the Maggotkin of Nurgle are a little more interesting than, say, the Death Guard, because the fact that there's a god of death and a god of life means they can't, like, ape off of both. Like, zombies aren't a thing for the Maggotkin, and
Right.
they're actually kind of horrified by zombies. And I think that's cool. So I would also put them in meh tier,
All
but
right.
mostly because they have a lot of negatives and a lot of positives that balance each other out.
All right. I'm just gonna put the Night Hunt in S, and we'll move on.
No, I want to talk about the Night Hunt.
Yeah. No. Let's talk about how amazing pretty much every single death update has been for Age of Sigmar.
Night Hunt are the army that got me into this game, and more so, Lady Olander's model got me into this game. I love Lady Olander. I love how cool the Night Hunt look, and more than that, my favorite Age of Sigmar character is Kurdos, the Craven King, who is,
Kurdos the Loser King.
well, that would still be calling him a king, which he isn't. But he's hilarious and great in every time he appears, and I just don't see how you can't love to see how he gets kicked down the stairs further.
Shade, tell me about Kurdos.
Ah, let me tell you about Kurdos. He was real good at the Game of Thrones, and got all of his siblings killed so he'd be crowned king, even though he wasn't really that close in line of succession. But he did all this backstabbery and evilness while worshiping Sigmar. And the Gash could not have that. So the second the crown touched Curtis's head, Nagash struck him dead and made him a Nighthawk. And he was cursed. He can never speak higher than a whisper. He can never command, only advise other commanders. He has a team of bodyguards who will kill, steal from him constantly, while Nagash primarily boosted his melee prowess. So he's
that
really
part
only good for
cracks me
beat
up.
stink.
The
And
with
well,
how
the
Night
back.
Hunt are like the only death faction with archers, and their archers are literally there just to kill steal from Kurdos.
And the best part of all is he's followed by the ghosts of two of his brothers who make fun of everything he does, like Statler and Waldorf. But really, like Nighthaunt are such a unique and cool take on ghosts. They're the spirits of the damned, each of them stricken to their own torment. It's honestly kind of like the ghost who visits Scrooge at the start of
Jacob Marley.
yeah, Jacob Marley. It's kind of like Jacob Marley, but like taken to its most extreme. And man, do some of the torments for the Night Haunt suck. But boy, does it add a lot of flavor.
I remember back in like first edition Sigmar, before Nighthaunt got updated, I was
Oh, they weren't even an army yet.
yeah, no, it was just like there's like here's the Legions of Nagash, and here's the start collecting box for skeletons, and here's a start collecting box for ghosts. And I'm like, hey, the ghosts look kind of cool, but wow, these most of these models these look terrible. And then the Nighthaunt got their update, and it was just like, holy crap. So, a
So,
very comfortable S tier.
very comfortable.
Next is another faction where it's, again, when I think of Oryx, I'm not thinking of Oryx, I'm thinking of Orcs. I think this
Yeah.
is Cruel Boys?
No, this is just Auric War Clans.
Oric War Clans,
Um,
yeah.
Because remember, the Cruel Boys, the Bone Splitters, and the Iron Jaws are all in one army book.
I don't remember that.
Um,
I will say I really like the dude who's riding a giant dinosaur. He looks fantastic.
Gordrak,
Yeah.
or just the generic Mega Boss on Maw Crusher.
I think it was Gordrak.
Well, it's the same. It's the same kit. It's just
Oh, okay.
you either put a special character on top or you put a generic war boss.
But other than that, like, I've seen some of their models, like the primitive Oryx. I think is kind of nifty, but nah, for the most part, I don't really have much of an opinion on Oryx.
I think it's valiant that they added more flavors of Oryx compared to Oryx. The Crow Boys were a cool addition. I like that there is a dichotomy between the Bone Splitters and the Iron Jaws, and actually, I guess a trichotomy, where it's are you more Gork, are you more Mork, or are you Gorka Morka? I think it's neat. They don't really particularly appeal to me, but they're fun. I
Meh.
would I would lower B tier them honestly.
Okay. Yeah, I have no opinion on them. So, moving
Ne-
on. Another
Next up
is a
is an
faction I
army.
actually plan to pick up this year once I get more financially stable. Well, I'm gonna pick these guys up and start kit bashing them
Hold
to make
on,
a Dark Mechanicus
you're
army.
gonna pick up an army that doesn't exist?
Listen, we don't live in a city of Sigmar anymore.
Maybe you don't.
Oh yeah,
I
see, I
perhaps
live in
unlive.
civilization. You don't.
I have perhaps unlive in a city of Sigmar.
So we're talking about the Skaven, of course.
Yes, the rat things.
They get killed, the little squishy ones, for the Great Horned Rat.
Kill, kill.
And these are another faction where, like, they've got some old models, but I think even their old models are still fantastic.
They at least have a bit of charm to
Yeah,
them.
they still have a lot of charm to them. I love the Scryer variants, where it's like hilariously advanced tech being slapped on literal rats.
Let's let's take a gun, a rubber band, and some warp stone. Throw it in a blender and see what happens.
And then we'll stitch 5 rats together and shove the resulting matter into their arm.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, Skaven are fun. Skaven are hilarious. They're one of those factions that make fantasy and Age of Sigmar what they are. Uh, One of the first things you think about. They're a very fun flavor of chaos. The Great Horned Rats, really cool. And I like all the different flavors of Skaven
Mm-hmm.
and how it's not just a color scheme difference, it's how you field the army.
It's like giant, you got massed monsters, massed super electric monsters, or giant stitched together abominations, or hordes upon hordes upon hordes,
Or
or lots
sneaky
of
gets.
assassins. And
Yes.
so I think they're a very comfortable S tier.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Moving on, Sigmarines.
The poster boys.
Uh,
The
I think they're a good B
Stormcast
tier.
Eternals.
I like their lore. I think the models aren't great, but we said this in the 40K video, and I completely agree with what Shay was saying in the 40K video. Sigmarines do the poster child thing better than Space Marines do, but Space Marines have generally better models.
Yeah, I mean, the issue is that Stormcast are aesthetically inferior while being narratively superior because the Stormcasts have a lot more character to them. They can have a much wider variety of backgrounds. They're not all born, child soldier warriors. They're heroes. And I think that's interesting. And there's a tragedy to the fact that they die and become less and less human with each death
Mm-hmm.
until eventually they maybe can't be brought back or are just automatons. Um, they also lose a lot more than Space Marines, which I think helps.
What I think is the
Stormcast gets
most
screwed a
helpful
lot.
thing is Stormcast. They're very much the face of Sigmar. and I don't think anyone's going to debate that they're the face of Sigmar. But GW doesn't feel the desperate need to put them into every single event and put them into every single game box.
Yeah, and the thing
Which,
that helps is the Stormcast get their new stuff when the edition begins, and then they don't get new stuff until like the next edition, or if they add a character or two at the end.
yeah. And so even if they are the poster children, like you don't feel resentful. It's like, oh, they get another new toy.
You know, they're not getting shoved in your face nearly as much.
Yeah. But I think they're, a very solid B. Maybe even A. Because I think, personally, the only thing really holding them back is they're kind of boring models.
Yeah, like they need traditional knightly helms. The face helmets are not doing it for me.
Would you want to take them up to A?
No, keep them in B.
Okay.
Because they're still I know they're above humans, but they are still humans, and I find that a little boring.
Alrighty. Next is one of my the very first army I started into Sigmar with, and it's an army where I really don't care about the lore itself. They're tree elves who got turned into spirits and got reanimated as tree people.
Well, they're not elves. They're just the spirits of the forest.
Well, there are a bunch of elves in there.
Out. The elves got kicked out.
Tree revenants are elves, and you cannot convince me otherwise.
I guess they do look elvish.
Yeah. And Ilariel used to be an elf herself, and then she died and got resurrected as the god of life.
She's still an elf.
Yeah. So, yes, the Sylvaneth are elves. But aside from Drisha Hamadreth, who's just an absolute dick, and who will happily screw everyone else over, including other Sylvaneth, to get more power, I don't necessarily care about the general lore of the Sylvaneth. But I absolutely love the model range. A couple of years ago, my friend was like, she saw models for another faction we'll talk about later, and fell in love. And I'm just like, you know what? I will pick up some models to paint and to get into the game with you. And so she got who we're going to talk about later, and I got Sylvaneth. And even now, I still have my Sylvaneth. I haven't played them since the before times. Before the Rona.
Thousands of years ago.
But from what I understand nowadays, Sylvaneth have a very frustrating to play against playstyle.
Yes.
So I'm not gonna argue to put them in S tier, even if I think they have one of the best model lines in the game.
Do you know why they're so frustrating?
Because it's near impossible to actually get a solid hit on them, and they just keep teleporting around.
They can teleport to a tree, charge out of it, fight you, and then teleport before you hit them back. Screw that.
Yeah, so I'm going to put them in A. Unless you want to put them in S, I can understand.
I don't want to put them in S.
Because I
cool,
legitimately think they have the best model line in the game.
Some of them look cool. I really don't care for some of their lore. They're one of those armies where I think they're kind of boring, with few exceptions. Jaicha is pretty cool. I think their goddess is boring.
You only think the goddess is boring because Nagash is just so much better on the other side of the coin.
Well, yes. Yes. If there's a better example of a god, the other gods look lamer by comparison. I would B tier them, but you've got such strong opinions that we can keep them in A tier.
All right.
But no, it is a low A tier.
All right. Next is the poster children. I think it's the poster children of Chaos. And we can talk about how much better they do Chaos than the Black Legion do.
It's the Slaves to Darkness, led by Archaon, the Ever-Chosen, Grand Marshal of the Apocalypse, which is a very funny title to me because it sounds like he's about to lead a parade.
The guy who actually destroyed the old world.
Well,
he was part of it.
he yeah, I mean he was about to lose. It was really more Manfred's fault.
Manfred.
But I digress.
Um,
Um,
I really like the Slaves to Darkness. I like the general like super bulky knights aesthetic. I love Archaon's model. Archaon's model.
I like how their basic troopers all look like they could be Sauron.
Mm-hmm. So I
Like,
think they're another comfortable A tier.
yeah, I would agree. So, they are more convincingly the main bad guys in Chaos Space Marines because, hey, they actually control most of the realms,
Yeah.
and there's a lot more of them than just about everyone else. Archaon does get a little power wanky and annoying, but GW has started to knock him down pegs in recent plot developments while keeping his menace. Because while he's never lost a battle, well, he's never lost a battle outside of being unable to invade Olgu. Um, he can't be everywhere, and better generals can maneuver around him. But if he shows up, you're screwed.
Right.
Speaking of better generals, however,
Shade, let me ask
uh,
you something.
yeah,
Do you think skeletons are cool?
I do think skeletons are cool.
Well, let me ask you something then. What is cooler than skeletons?
Super skeletons? No, wait, I have a better answer. The IRS.
Well, what if we have super skeletons as the IRS?
Is it possible to learn this power?
Not from a Sigmarite. And that's why the OCR Bone Reapers, the best looking death faction, rivaled only closely by the Night Haunt, go nice up there in S tier.
See, I switch them around. I think the Night Hunt look cooler than them, just because there are a few OCRs I don't particularly like the look of. But my god, what an original idea. What an original, like, visual idea, original lore, just a breath of fresh air, entirely new model. They only have one model that's sort of a reference to something that was in fantasy, um, but it looks completely different. Wow, the OCRs are
Yeah.
cool.
When I started Sigmar, I started with the Sylvaneth. And I never really got into the Sylvaneth. You know, I like the aesthetic. I really like the aesthetic, but I never really got into them. When I saw the OCRs, I was like, "Oh man!" And these guys are what started to get me actually interested in Sigmar.
And then he found out that they also collect taxes.
And you know,
Oh,
I might be a
taxes.
communist, but oof, oh they do tax collecting well.
Well, I mean, all's fair in death. Pay your fucking taxes.
Yep, there are there are only two certainties in life: death and taxes. Until you meet a OCR, and then you find out there's taxes in death as well.
It's death and taxes.
Indeed.
Really emphasis on the and. Also, Catacross, really cool model, really cool character.
Like I said,
Love me some
all of
Catacross.
the OCRs are fucking cool models.
But going from taxes, let's talk to the people who probably hate taxes the most.
The capitalists, the Caradron overlords, the dwarves done right,
At least the squat's done right.
the leagues of Votan, what the leagues of Votan wish they could be.
Yeah. Um,
I'll be
Peregrine
honest,
Overlords.
I don't
God.
care for the the steampunk aesthetic they have, but at the
Well,
same
more
time,
Magitech.
but at the same time, I dig the consistency with it and the fact that like it still feels like it fits with the general setting.
Yeah, I mean, they're a very original take on the dwarven stereotype, and I feel like that's one of the things I most enjoy about Age of Sigmar is when they take very familiar fantasy tropes and put a twist on them. Um, And I'm kind of in the same boat where I don't care for their aesthetic, but I can see why people would like it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a worthwhile and worthy addition. They are
VA.
unfortunately, I'd put them in A. What holds them back is they're kind of an annoying army to fight because they are mostly gunning you down and running away, which can feel a little annoying.
Yeah.
But overall, very fun, very cool looking, very original. And if you're annoyed about the guy who has like, the gun beard, I believe that's a special character, and it's not like across their entire army. So shut up.
But also, why would you hate a gunbeard?
I
Why
don't
do you care?
know. People are lame.
All right. So we were talking about the based keybs. We talked about the technically not keybs. Let's talk about the keybs.
More key than you can possibly imagine. Yes, it is the Lumineth Realm Lords.
And the
The
Lumineth are a
perfected.
faction that I do not give a single crap about.
Yep. Me neither.
So let's
They're,
look at the meh. They have a
oh.
couple interesting models, but I mean, I don't give a crap about their god, dude. I don't give a crap about their lore. Why am I censoring myself? And
Okay.
one of the things that I don't like about Sigmar is I don't necessarily dig generic sword and sorcery. And Lumineth Realm Lords, their general models are like the embodiment of we are generic elves.
What about their croquet mallets? I don't like the Lumineth either. They screwed over my best boy Nagash and did so in a way I have some disagreements with. They kind of come off as Mary Sue's, which, like, I get that the elves in fantasy were perfect beings and all that, but that was a lower fantasy setting. I feel like there's a lot more stuff that should be higher power than your average elf in Age of Sigmar. So they're like extreme perfectionism and they're
So, meh
so
or C?
aggravating. I would see them. They've got some cool models, but they also have some lame models.
God, at this point, we're going to have one army in our meh tier. Because we're talking about
There's at
Seraphon,
least
and I dig Seraphon.
Seraphon are cool. Hilariously enough, originally I was going to put them in A tier, but then their GW unveiled their new model update, which was the thing that kept them out of S tier. So
Yeah.
with that in mind, throw them on up.
So, how do you resurrect yourself?
I have a Black Pyramid build me bit by bit over like a century, my dude.
You're like little baby. Watch this. Croak!
Ah, God, Lord Croak.
Lord Croak's lore cracks me the hell up. Lord Croak died in the old world, like when the world was destroyed. He died. And then last year, he just decided, I don't want to be dead anymore. So he just decided he was alive again.
I mean, that happened in fantasy too. His body was dead, but his spirit was strong enough he just stuck around. And then he just decided he was alive.
Yeah. And that is some next level shenanigans, and I am here for it.
Also, just dinosaurs are cool.
Yeah.
Aztec dinosaurs are cool.
Yeah.
They've got science fiction elements, which are pretty cool. Also, just dinosaurs. I mean, come on, man. They're so cool. Back when fantasy was a thing, they were one of the things that almost got me into playing it.
Oh, can we also talk about how Seraphon killed Be'lakor?
Well, the lizard men killed Be'lakor with rocks.
Many rocks.
Dropped from pterodactyls. Rocks. But so, yeah, Lizardmen almost got me into fantasy. The only other thing that almost got me into fantasy was the Gash's model being released for end times. And oh boy, am I glad I didn't take up that offer.
I remember when I first saw Nagash's model. This was before I even got into 40k, and man, I thought Nagash was over-designed.
He's so cool.
Now I look at it, I'm just like, oh my god, that is such a gorgeous model.
Speaking of Nagash, let's talk about his
Most
most
boring.
rebellious of children.
So the Soulblight Gravelords. I like half of this faction.
Is it the Skeleton Warriors?
I love the Skeleton Warriors. I really like the concept of what they did with the Whites, where, you know, they're these immortal warriors who have their own wills and emotions, and, you know, can embody the whole evil skeleton curses. You know, they've got the spooky. They've got the spooking and the rattling. And then you've got generic vampire counts. And while there are interesting vampire ideas in them, you know, like the vermin or whatever the animal vampires are called.
Oh, oh, crap. Why am I blanking on them right now? Let's see. There's Castelli Dynasty. Those are the Crimson Keep guys. There's the Avangori. Those are the super monstrous guys. Virkos.
Virkos, yeah. So the Virkos are a fantastic idea. The Avangori I kind of like, but for the most part, vampires it's just generic vampire counts
What about the
alongside.
Castelli Dynasty and their teleporting castle?
It's still just vampire warriors. It's Castlevania.
Are you saying Castlevania isn't?
I'm saying Castlevania is Castlevania, and we don't need to have Castlevania in Sigmar just because Castlevania was cool.
Fair enough.
So
Um,
I would put them in B myself, because while I do really like the Soulblight Gravelords, or I know that's it's the Vampire Curse,
the Death Rattle,
the Death
the
Rattle.
White Kingdoms.
I really like the Death Rattle and the White Kingdoms. I don't care about the vampires.
What about the zombies?
What about the zombies?
Yeah, right. They are basic. They are very basic here. Um, I I would put them in A tier for me personally. I do agree that like vampires have lost a bit of their luster compared to all of the new death stuff that got released. It's like it's
Yeah,
still just vampires.
like you compare them
And
even to the Flesh Eater Course. Like they're old and ugly models, but they've still got so much character in comparison to vampire counts.
I don't necessarily agree. Like Blood Knights are cool as hell. A lot of them look cool, um, but like I do think it's interesting that vampires in Sigmar got knocked down because in fantasy they were one of the only two death armies. Now they're one of four, and they're not even the favorites.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Nagash likes the OCRX way more than he likes vampires, and he can rely on the Night Haunt way more than he can rely on vampires. Um, you really want to put him in B.
I mean,
I really want to.
if you really want to put him in A, I'm willing to put him in A.
You know what? Throw B, like upper B tier.
All right.
I do think the Virkos are very cool, though.
Yes, I
Especially
agree.
Kritza
Virkos
the
are
Rat
really cool.
Brains. Kritza's so cool.
All right. So earlier I was talking about when I got into Sylvaneth, was with my friend. She came into the GW store, and I was trying to convince her to try painting. I wasn't necessarily trying to get her into the hobby because she didn't necessarily have the time or the money or the community to play Warhammer. So I'm like, I'm gonna buy you a kit, and let's see what you do. And so we were looking through the stuff, and she saw Snake People, and she was like, "Oh my god, I love them." And so she bought, I ended up buying her some of the Doomfire Warlocks, the horse people. But then she bought herself some Melusai, and then her eyes fell upon Marathi. And despite me telling her, no, stop, do not buy this, she ended up spending about $300 on models she never built, never painted, and never played with. Of course, now I'm painting them for her, and she's going to have a really nice display. But Daughters of Cain are a faction I would love to pick up myself at some point.
You tend to do that. This is going to be the inverse of our usual setup. I'm very meh about the Daughters of Cain. I think the Snake People and their winged ones look pretty neat. Like I like their
The Kinnerai?
Yeah, the Kinnerai. That's very cool. But they revolve way too much around Marathi. And I get that's a big part of the point. Like, they only exist because it's Marathi's ploy to become a goddess. But it feels like they have so little character that doesn't have to do with Marathi.
See, I feel you were saying earlier that the Ideneth are very heavily based on the Drukhari. I feel like the Daughters of Cain are the Age of Sigmar Drukhari.
Oh well, you're not wrong. They're the torture and blood sport, whereas the Ideneth are the raids and stealing, consuming people's souls. Neither of them are really truly the Drukhari. They split the Drukhari theming. Because you gotta remember, a big difference is the Daughters of Cain actively operate in the middle of Sigmarite cities, whereas the Ideneth live in a secret underwater cities.
And the stupid kids are trying to kill them off.
Yeah, the Lumineth want them dead. Teclis wants them dead.
So, I also dig their power from pain, the way they do their power from pain as a mechanic. Like, overall, like, if I were to actually play Sigmar, the 3 factions I'd play right now are Daughters of Cain, Sylvaneth, and Osiarchs.
That's a mighty suspiciously high amount of elves. You a Keeb lover?
No, I just like Edge.
Ow, the Edge. Alright,
So these guys are my last S pick, but I understand you don't care for them.
I'm mad enough about them that I would slot them in the B tier if we've got to split the difference. A tier would be a very big stretch for me. If you want to slot them in A tier, I guess that's fine. I would just personally, I don't feel them.
Yeah, I like I said, I love these guys. So this is gonna be a controversial one. Now I get to say it. Whoops.
The problem with me is there is no way I'm putting above Soulblight Gravelords. So they'd be like an upper B tier, I guess.
Yeah, okay. And finally, the Hedon Knights of Slaanesh. And here I get to talk about how much more I love the mortals than the demons. And why Sigmar does Slaanesh so much better than 40k does. Because we didn't really get to talk about the Emperor's Children because they were just generic Chaos Space Marines. The Emperor's Children fucking suck. Lucius the Eternal is the worst champion of the worst chaos-bound champion. Fabius Bile is interesting, but his whole concept is idiotic because how are you a atheist literally surrounded by demons? And Noise Marines are interesting as a concept, but man, do they need a model update. Meanwhile, over in Sigmar, you got the pretty boy dude with assless chaps, Sigvald. That took me a second. I forgot his name. You've got what's that? The fat lord dude's name?
Isn't his name like Glutos?
Yeah, Glutos, and that's like embracing the parts of Slaanesh that aren't just ha 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 sex and drugs. He looks like a hedonist. You've got all like the mortal archers and stuff, the Blissbar archers, and like the people riding seekers that aren't just more demonettes. And then you got the Slangors, and the Slangors are there. So I love the Hedonites of Slaanesh.
Hedonites of Slaanesh. Sinful spectacles stand, shuffle, shamble, and saunter shamelessly in my scandalized sight. I suggest a solution. Surely such sedition should shower and succumb to Sigvald, the salacious, scandalous, and sensational Slanesh, son of Succubi, scion of sordid axe and slayer of squalid serfs. See how I stroll, stride, swagger, and swirl, spin, slash, and stab at stupid, seamless scum. Soon they shall swoon, shall seek solace in death from sundry torments, wrought on them by my strategic, severing, scintillating shower of simmering strikes. Send for the sword! Summon Silver Slash! I'm amazed I pulled that off.
So
I think they've got really cool
slide into
characters. For the alliteration, I'm very tempted. Slanesh doesn't appeal to me, but I really like their Age of Sigmar model. I really like their Age of Sigmar characters. I think the Slanesh being imprisoned plotline is cool and has made them more interesting than the majority of Chaos factions. I think the Skaven are still above them.
Also, the new Keepers of Secrets, like the new Greater Demons that they've got.
Oh God!
Like pretty much the entire new demon model line. Like the Infernal and Rapturous is probably my favorite demon model. The new Keeper Secrets box was gorgeous. Shalaxi Halbane is fantastic. I talked about how I loved her story with the Yanari in the 40k list. The Newborn are gorgeous models.
They're definitely like an upper A tier for me, and I feel like if you're placing them in S tier, then I'm comfortable putting them in S tier.
All right. So
wow.
This
we really
list
did
is
just have
we really did just have one Met tier. So I think this list is a lot less perfectly balanced, as all things should be, as than the 40k one was. But while there are ones I disagree with, I'm pretty happy with this list. So in the S tier, we've got the Ideneth Deepkin, the Gloomspite Gitz, the Nighthaunt, the Skaven, the OCR Bone Reapers, the Seraphon, and the Hedonites of Slanesh.
That is a lot of Hesses.
Yeah, there is. It's like when we had the entire D tier of Knights. In A tier, we've got the Disciples of Tzeentch, the Bretonnians, the Sylvaneth, the Slaves to Darkness, and the Kharadron Overlords. In B tier, we've got the Soulblight Gravelords, the Daughters of Cain, the Sons of Bahamut, the Ogor Maud tribes, the Blades of Khorne, the Auric War tribes, and the Stormcast Eternals. In C tier, we've got Fireslayers, Beasts of Chaos, Cities of Sigmar, and the Lumineth Realm Lords. And in Meh, the Maggot Kingdom Nurgle.
There's one thing I just remembered that I want to mention. Fuck playing against the Lumineth. Fuck them.
That bad, eh?
Fuck their rules. Oh, they suck. Mass archers that do mortal wounds onto hit. That ignore line of sight. Screw them.
So I'm going to rename the bottom tiers just to make it clear of our opinions.
Should we maybe make the meh tier into garbage and then swap them around so they're clear that meh is above garbage?
Yeah, okay.
Alright, so B tier.
I don't think we need to name all of them, it's just these guys suck.
Oh, God.
I'm still mad about that Cities of Sigmar game.
I'm still mad about mine.
So Shay,
yeah.
You had to pick one of these factions to build and paint in the next 6 months, and it can't be a death faction. Would it be Seraphon?
Seraphon. Well, I guess it would depend on how soon. Well, I guess do their old stuff before their already existing updated stuff before I got into their new stuff. because those I really want to do mass Source Warrior, and Source Warriors look cool.
I might have chosen Hedonist to Slaanesh if not for the fact that I technically already have a Slaanesh Demons army. So I don't think that really counts. So I'd probably do. Like I said, I plan to do Skaven this year.
I'm surprised you didn't say the OCR.
I mean, I also want to do the Osiarks, but I already have plans for Skaven.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, like last time, let us know what you think about this list, whether or not you like it or dislike it. Unlike the 40k one, I don't super stand behind a lot of these choices the way I did with them. Mostly because I don't know if it's that obvious. I don't know Sigmar as much. Shade's more the expert on that one.
No, that said, we didn't. You were probably expecting a lot more to go into Met here, and instead we had enough opinions to firmly place people.
I mean, you heard how many of these I was putting into mess, so.
Very fair.
All right. Well, Shay, do you have any witticisms to leave us with?
Praise Nagash.
Okay.